Good afternoon. It's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology, and it's our regular in the hot seat session on a Thursday. We are going to move it from 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock from next week onwards. So on the Thursday, so we've got consistency. So at 2 o'clock each day when we actually do this. But let's get our guest in, which is Mike Dingley. How are you doing, Mike?
Hi, Lee. Thanks for having us on today. I'm fine, thank you.
All right, so we start off normally with a bit of background. So tell us where you were born, where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, the kind of things you did as a child, maybe hobbies, interests, and what you were doing at school and what you plan to do with your life.
Yeah, so Birmingham, born and raised, really. Grew up in a little area called Withall, Withall and Hollywood.
Yeah, I know the area. I'm only in All Green, so I'm not too far away from there.
Oh, yeah, okay. So grew up there, went to Woodruff School. Pretty standard young lad's life, really. Play a lot of football. I was massive into sport. Always thought that's what I was going to do. Thought I'd be a footballer, a runner, or whatever. I wasn't good enough, but that's my life revolved around sport, basically. Mum and dad. Mum was a school teacher. Dad was an engineer by trade, but dad was kind of he could build anything. Built our own house. So the family home we lived in, he built. So at age of about 22, he bought like an old orchard with an asbestos cottage on, knocked it down, and pretty young age to do that, and built his own house. And that's kind of something that inspired me very, very early on. So that's where we lived, and they've still got the house up on Alcester Road in Hollywood now.
So what did you plan to do with yourself then? What were you doing? Did you go on to college or anything? Or do you have any particular plans?
I did sixth form, then went to university, did sports science, the standard sports science degree. Again, I knew I wanted, at this point, I just enjoyed sport, and that's what I wanted to be in. So sports science degree, didn't really apply myself at university, to be honest. Got through.
You enjoyed the social aspects more than the educational aspects.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I was one of those students, to be honest. I actually moved out while I was at uni, so I only went to Birmingham, but I actually moved out because I just wanted that whole experience. So I actually moved from a few miles up the road to Selly Oak from Hollywood. Finished university, and then kind of stumbled around a few jobs, then got a job at the athletic governing body, UK Athletics. Moved to Manchester for that because I was so.
What type of thing were you doing there?
It was initially I was in kind of child safeguarding. I wanted any into sports, and there was an opening there. Because I didn't have a lot of ties in Birmingham, I thought that's what we'll do. Did that, came back to the Solihull offices after a little while, but it was basically I struggled to kind of move up. I mean, I wasn't really applying myself, if I'm honest. I was still enjoying going out and doing all the things young guys do, and so it came out of sport because I just couldn't seem to move up. Then stumbled around a few jobs and got offered by a friend of mine in construction, offered me a contract managing job. And the side of this, we were always into, as a family, renovating properties. And that's what me, my dad and my brother did quite a bit. So we nothing massive, just low level, we'd buy.
So you had a background and an experience of it anyway then?
Yeah, that was it. We were always building, always doing extensions and things like that. So we were doing that on the side. My day job was for a contract manager. So that was kind of my first big step into any form of kind of management role. And I was kind of the go-between between the builders on site, the surveyors, the bean counters, everyone. So I was kind of pulling everyone together. And I was relatively good at it. I enjoyed it. It was stressful, but it worked nicely alongside kind of, we were doing houses up, and we were in property really. That was how I started things really.
Okay, so how long did you stay with that role?
I was with this company for around about 5 years. And like I said, at this time we were buying properties, doing them. And it was at that point we kind of looked at things, and we'd come out of the recession then, and we started to toy with the idea of maybe an estate agent would be a good idea. So the idea behind estate agents was only really to get hold of properties or get near developments that we could kind of build houses, because that's what we kind of wanted to do.
Yeah. So it was just to be able to get involved more. It wasn't really the idea of actually being an estate agent. It was actually being closer to the property market and things.
In all honesty, yeah, that's what kind of attracted us to it. And then we toyed with this for years, you know, around about 2 years back, we thought about doing it, and I did qualification things. And then all of a sudden, I got made redundant, kind of out of the blue. And it kind of knocked me for six, and it knocked my confidence massive. I couldn't believe it. And it was quite awkward because one of a good friend of mine, it was his dad's company, and he gave me the heads up it was going to happen this day. I was like, oh, geez. And it happened. But it did force my hand, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is, you know, I've got no choice. This is good now. So
let's do it.
Yeah, that was it. I got a small redundancy payment. I got, you know, we're talking like $3 grand. They let me keep the laptop I had, so I could set up. So I literally set the company up from that point, and that was it. And that's when Black and Gold started. From
so why the name then? Why Black and Gold?
Well, as random as my surname's Dingley, and I've got a relatively big ego. I like to call it after myself, but with a name like that, I can't. No one would sell a house with a dingle or a ding or dingles, you know. So weirdly, we had been in New Orleans the year before at a friend of mine's stag do, randomly, and we that year, I know nothing about American football, but the New Orleans Saints had won the Super Bowl the year before, and their colours are black and gold, and it was everywhere. And when we were out there, I said to my brother, I said, that's what we'll call it that. You know, that it looks spot on. And I just, as random as that, nothing deep or meaningful. It was just, I like the look of the colours. So we set up a limited company, and that was it. We went to company's house, and bang, we started Black and Golds. And so, yeah, there's nothing inspiring behind it. It was just, I've got a crap surname. So that was it, basically.
There's got to be reasons for everything, though, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
that's it.
But it's actually out of fashion for people to actually create businesses with their names nowadays.
Yeah,
most people don't do that, because the trouble is when you sell it, you know, it's difficult if it's tied to a person's name. So it's much easier to have a separate, business entity from you as an individual. So you know, you kick this off. You had no experience in estate agency before you started, had you? Other than understanding about construction, working with projects in construction and renovation. So what was it a big learning curve moving into estate agency?
Yeah, so, looking back, it's amazing. I don't know how I got through it, to be honest, because I did come into it completely raw. I've always been a relatively confident person who can kind of sell. So I quickly did my qualifications. That's the thing with the estate agency, ridiculously, you'd actually need no qualifications to work in something as important as that. And it's madness, really. So I quickly whipped through those. I knew property relatively well anyway in the area, but I slowly but surely, I mean, you've got to imagine at this point, no one was using me. For the first 6 months, no one had even heard. So I was faking it till I made it, basically. I was putting fake boards out. I was just basically leafleting. So I got about 20,000 of these leaflets made, and I said I'd cut everyone's commission fee in half. Didn't matter what it was. If it was 500 quid, I'd do it for 250. I was just doing it for fees. And I just spent the days pushing leaflets. It was a weird time, because I was lucky, to be honest, because my wife, I mean, we weren't even married at the time. My girlfriend at the time, Aim, had a relatively good job, and she could kind of support. So we had to go from me earning good money to absolutely nothing. And she was supporting the house. We had a house at this point. And it was a bit of a scary time, because I don't think I took on in my brain that we weren't going to have masses of properties coming in. I think I was kind of telling myself we would get a good renovation job out the back of this, and I'd flip that, and that's how it would pay for the wedding and things like that. So I used to spend my days just pushing leaflets through, and that's all I would do. I'd target boards, I'd put fake boards up at all my mates' house, and just get everything, get the name out there as much as I could. We use social media heavily. But looking back, we didn't use it very well. We just put a lot of stuff out there.
Because sometimes with social media, you can be extremely busy, but not actually productive, can't you? So
that was it. And I think we did a lot of that. But eventually, we started to get a family friend of mine took pity on me, I think, and they said I could sell the house for them, and I did it for free. But they let me sell the house. And I'm eternally grateful for them for that, because that gave me my first proper sale. And then off the back of that, and it wasn't even our area, so it was over towards West Heath. So I put that on. Off the back of that, I got another board around the corner, because again, when I was there, I was just leafleting all around the area. I got another one off that. And then we kind of slowly started, but not really in our area. And so really my days were just spent pushing leaflets through and desperately trying to tell anyone about this company. that was the best thing ever.
Did you diversify and put Chinese menus through as well as your own leaflets?
Yeah. We did anything to put. I mean, I would literally pin things. I'd pin it to like the pinboard up at the Maypole Sainsbury's. I was just putting leaflets on the pinboard up there. We were putting it everywhere. And then it you know, we got a few properties and started to move it along. Yeah. So
when was that first property you sold then?
So I was just thinking about this earlier. We started the company. We started in August of 2012, and we didn't even agree a sale till Jack. So I remember agreeing a sale in January, and that was one. And then I was terrible at sales progression because remember at this point I thought you sell a house and then it goes through, and I didn't really know how to sales progress anything. I had my brother who was a solicitor. He was helping me through and getting me to understand the process. So I didn't particularly sales progress it particularly swiftly. So we didn't get paid for then another 6 months after that. So for the first year, we didn't get anything through. And obviously there's costs as well. I mean, our costs were minimal.
Yeah.
I was working from my house. I had a piece of wood that I got a Vista Prints black and gold thing, and I screwed that to this oak tree at the front of our house. and that was my and then I couldn't afford Rightmove. So I wasn't even going into people's front room and saying, hi, you haven't heard of me. I haven't even got Rightmove for you because I couldn't Rightmove, you couldn't afford Rightmove. So I was just basically using Zoopla, social media, and just winging it really.
Is it expensive then, Rightmove? It's an agent, is it expensive?
Like you wouldn't believe. They've got the absolute monopoly as well. I don't think I can discuss what the fees are on it, but it is unbelievable. But you can't deal with that. We can't not deal with them. That's the problem.
Yeah, because I think that seems to be where everybody goes to look for a property now.
Yeah,
and then they find the property via there, and then they find the agent via there from a buying perspective, don't they?
That's it. They're excellent. They're excellent at their job, but they're just terrible to deal with because they've got the monopoly. So they up your fees every year. There's no negotiation. I fancy myself as a negotiator, and I can't get them to come down a pound on the fees. So it's unbelievable. I'd like not to use them, but I've got to. I'm afraid. And yeah, they are good. They make the phone go. So we couldn't even afford Rightmove early days. So yeah, it was a good. Yeah, it wasn't until the summer of 2013 we got even a penny through the door. And when we're talking getting paid, I think the first fee I got paid, the first one we did was free, obviously. So Nicole's house was free, and the one off the back of that was £1,000. So it wasn't, it was
not a lot of money.
Nothing was coming in, yeah. So the first 2 years were real tough with it, and off the back of it, it was just this kind of thought that we'll get properties off it. But then when we started to get the sales, we got one in Shirley. Just off a leaflet, and that was really the catalyst for us getting into an area because it was a good road. So I sold it really quickly, and it made a good noise. And all of a sudden, Black and Gold had put a board up. We'd sold it quickly. We'd sold it for a good amount. We can make a lot of noise about it, and all of a sudden we started to get boards, I started to learn my trading because by that I was going into more houses, valuing more houses. And slowly but surely, I was becoming an estate agent. And I rapidly then realised I was better at estate agents than I was property renovating. My dad and my brother are good builders.
Yeah.
And, they're excellent at it. I'm okay, but I was soon realising that sales was where I was strong, and business in general I was good at it. So then it started to gain traction, and we went from. We received a lot of hostility initially because we were undercutting everyone. And when we did start to get a little bit of traction, we got a lot of kind of complaints that were probably from our competitors. We even had the one day I was sat in the kitchen, and there was a guy out on the lawn at the front, and he was measuring my little board on the tree. And I was like, what the hell's he doing? So I went out and asked him, and he had been sent he was from the council, and our board had been reported that it was too big. You can only have a certain square footage of advertising board on a residential property. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, you are joking me. Give me a chance. So, in the end, we literally hacked bits off this thing and said, go and measure that now. So we just made it into an unmeasurable piece and just left it there. But yeah, so that was, we got a lot of hostility from people. But we started gaining traction. So much so we ended up then taking a little office space, which was the first real step, which was good. And that was good. We kind of became a proper estate agent, it felt like.
Yeah, because a lot of people are actually used to going and physically walking in and looking at things in the window and asking for paper, and that's how it used to be, wasn't it? That was the old way that estate agency was done. This new modern world of Rightmove and all the other things has changed it completely. So
Yeah.
when you were learning to start with that, how did you actually work out how to value a property if you've never worked in the industry before and you didn't have anything to work on?
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of, obviously, the good thing you do get with Zoopla and Rightmove, and we didn't have Rightmove this one, we did have Zoopla. You get a lot of kind of information about what has sold previously, and you got to remember, from my point of view, we were doing very bread and butter properties. We were doing a lot of 3-bed semi-detached, and there's a lot of 3-bed semi-detached in our area. So within a quarter of a mile, you could get relatively near to where you thought you had to be, and then you just had to kind of measure it from in there. And it's a strange one, valuing properties, because you're going in and it's the most, not the most important thing, but it's the most money that someone's got tied up in their life, that bricks and mortar. So it's very important to them. So there's too many people barnstorming and are arrogant enough to kind of say, this is what your house was. It's not, you've got to kind of measure where they feel it is. You've got to kind of measure the quality once you go in. There's a sliding scale of these things. And I'm never someone who goes and says, this is, I know this is what you're going to get. And I learned that early, that, people are very precious about the house, and quite rightly so. And so it was measuring, and I think that's why I did well early, because I measured people better than a lot of these arrogant estate agents that went in and just said, I've sold 100 properties on this road, this is what it's worth. So that worked well, I think, and I gained traction from that. I wasn't going in and kind of saying, just kind of telling everyone the house was worth $500,000 when it was 400,000. I felt I was quite good at measuring where the properties were, and I was doing a lot of research, because we didn't have a lot of values. Like, I'd value one a week probably. There was other companies I go in. Yeah. I mean, yes, on Monday I was in on 7 valuations, so I'm going to a lot now. But at that point, I was doing one a week, so I was doing a lot of research on these properties. Yeah. So I was driving by, I was walking by, I was on Google Earth, I was looking at everything. So yeah, so I was doing my research, and that meant that the ones I was going into, I was doing okay at.
Yeah, because it's not, there's no actual physical price for something, is it? It's what somebody's willing to pay for it. So it's their decision whether it's worth, you mentioned 500,000 or 400,000. It's whether they believe it's worth 400,000 or 500,000 to them. And everybody can make a decision, and it's also whether they can afford it as well. Because if it's above a certain threshold, they're going to struggle to get the mortgage, aren't they? So
absolutely,
you've got to look at that maximum threshold for a lot of people as well. So and also, I find it quite bizarre that some people go in there and they're actually looking at the fittings and furniture when it'll be gone. Because I've been to look at a house with my wife, and she's saying, "Well, I don't like the settee." But it won't be here. It won't be here. Don't like the kids. They won't be there.
It still works massively, though. These nicely staged properties still do command a massive amount, and you're not buying that. The nicest house on moving day can look pretty hollow after the beautiful oak table's gone. It's just those bare walls. Yeah.
But in the US, there's a big, business around actually staging properties, isn't there? Actually getting them
it's getting more
dressed.
that way here as well. There's more. It's kind of the American and Australian models coming more in a lot of the realtors you're seeing. There is a more. I think it's a good thing. I think people are taking more pride in the industry. For too long, estate agency has just been, real nonsense. You've seen the countrywide companies have churned out this service that's been poor without even thinking about any pride of kind of service. So I think it's a good thing that that is becoming more of a thing, certainly.
So we see open houses then soon, like the Americans do, where everybody can come in, have a wander around. It is. I've never seen it.
COVID finished that as such. I was never a big fan of an open house as people wandering around all together before COVID anyway, because I just think that you get your buyers quite uptight, because they're just around 3 other versions of themselves, because typically the same type of person comes to look at the same house. You get these same couples that are driving similar cars that turn up at the same time, and they're just measuring each other rather than the house. And I'm not a big fan. I like people to have their own time to look around, critique a property, but open house is certainly a thing now, definitely, especially with the command on houses. We're getting 20, 30 viewers per house at the moment, and so these open or block viewings are essential to get people through.
Yeah, to get the volume. So what was different then about your approach to to selling properties at Black and Gold that was different to everyone else? Because again, you've got to stand out, haven't you, in some way? So you must have done something different.
Yeah, I think it's kind of gone with stage with Black and Gold. I think certainly initially I was just relentless and like a dog with a bone, and I did it cheap. I didn't make any money. I wasn't fussed about making money. We had other companies that started at the same time as me, and I would talk to them, and they were kind of bothered about what they were making. I didn't care about the money. I was more bothered about getting properties, and then the brand kind of followed that. And then I kind of got the office. So I took a little office out on Alton Road up in Shirley, and it was. I basically again faked it. It was a big office space. My brother had done some commercial work for this guy, and it was just an empty office. So I went to see him, and he said it was too big because it was only me at this point. So I took this office out, and I took half. He agreed to give me half of this office. We split it in two. We staged it with a load of desks, like there was loads of people working there, but there wasn't. So we put flags outside the front, and we made it look the business. So then all of a sudden the brand became quite important. That became important to me, growing the brand.
So it's more building the brand to start with, to try and get awareness, in that early stages.
That was it. And I enjoyed it. I began enjoying I enjoyed the aggressiveness we were getting from the others. I enjoyed the whole game of it. It was fun to me. And then slowly but surely we started getting staff, and that was a real buzz. So the first, I had my mom come to work for me initially, and then I took an apprentice. I took Alex on. I took an apprentice on, and my sister-in-law came to work for us. So then it felt like we really had this kind of little team, and it became a thing then. And that was the moment it kind of became a thing. And that was kind of like the first stage, and that was good. People had gone from never hearing of us at all to okay, that Black and Gold, which was nice. But we weren't making any money. There's no doubt we were very tight on money there. I think probably while people thought I'd still cracked it, we were still doing very low fees. And where we were doing,
you can't sustain forever though, can you?
Well, that was it. We couldn't, we were doing decent numbers then, but not a lot of money at all. I couldn't get away from this doing these low fees. And, we got to a point where, I remember there's one point where I actually had to pump I still wasn't taking a massive wage. I was looking ahead at the wages. I was like, we're not going to be able to afford the wages this month. So I had to take a few £1,000s and put my own money back into the company. And that was a hard moment because I felt like we had cracked it. I had the office. Everyone was congratulating me, telling me how great Black and Gold was. But actually, and I've never really spoke about this before, we hadn't. We had it all there, and the brand was good, and we were giving a good service because that was the thing we were going over and above because because everything was so important to us, but we weren't charging enough. And then all of a sudden, that moment, I was like, right, you got to stop messing. So at that point, at this point, I was still playing football on Saturdays and things like that. So I quit football. I quit everything except for this, and I just honed in on it. And that was it. Yeah, we focused. And one of the main things we did then that kind of springboards to the next level was we started to market differently. And it was a little bit about looking at the American model of stuff. And we put my face on stuff more. And before that, we were putting a lot of kind of just the brands, the Black and Gold signs and these kind of generic things. And we started to put a human in front of people. And that was all because this was before video was a real thing. I remember putting videos and having to message my mates and say, listen, I'm going to put this video on. You can't take the piss. You can do me on the WhatsApp lads group, but you can't have me on here because it was so awkward for me. But we did that, and that was a big moment. That was big there. And that almost gave us this unique thing. That then we became straight away people saying, what's he doing? Why would he bother doing that? But it did definitely work, and it gave us that unique kind of selling point that we were the ones that were doing video in the area. We did that, and then from there it really kicked on to where we are now. Yeah.
So what you're trying to do that's different going forward then? So you've tried these other things in the past. You did it cheap and it built the brand, but you were struggling financially. You've gone back to regular figures. You tried some video type activity. What else are you doing that's different? To try get people to see the properties. And is it all just like Rightmove? Is that the only way to really get people in? Is that?
Yeah, it's hard because we're very lucky in the area we are. There's no doubt about it. Houses are certainly selling themselves. I think where we're selling, we believe we give maximum market value for properties. And by that, I mean, anyone can get a sold board up in the area at the minute. It's relatively simple. Anyone can agree good sales and a good figure. So, you put your house on for 300, you get a best and final situation, you get 310,000, people are happy. But it's not about putting that sold board up. It's about getting money in the client's account at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we believe that, from start to finish, I believe I've kind of I've put people in across the company that are very, very strong. And, there's certain people that are absolutely, I feel like I've got my best team on the pitch basically now, Black and Golds. And I have had since really the COVID hit. I feel like I've had a very, very strong team. And I feel that at the moment is our unique thing. We're certainly getting people maximum market value from not just agreeing a good sale, from doing, nice photos to negotiating hard to, tying the sale up. It's the sales progression as well. We have, I have my sister-in-law still works for the company. She's an excellent sales progressor. We've got some really good people in that department as well. And I feel from, the whole team, we look after you from the start all the way through. And that's something I don't think a lot of agents do. I think they get the sale, they show off about the sale, and then they lose track of the fact that, your job is to get as much money in your client's account as simply as possible. And that's what we've tried to do. And I think we've achieved that pretty well.
I think that's always been a challenge, hasn't it, with the conveyancing side? It's always been a slow process. And also when you've got large chains, it becomes an even slower process because everybody's got to move along at the speed of the slowest person in the chain, haven't they?
Yeah, so, it's the biggest risk. You're very vulnerable selling because that chain can break down at any point. And conveyancers are so important. If you can get a weak conveyancer or someone that, if you end up butting heads with a conveyancer, and I learned that early doors, you've got to build good relationships with these solicitors because like your lumpet, we need to use them. They are very, very important in the process. So get a good solicitor and just communicate well. And just communication, I think, is the main, the continuity of communication across the whole company from the moment the first person does a viewing all the way through to the moment they tear the keys are done. That's important. And, that's what we...
I think that's always been a difficult part. So each seller or the buyer have their own solicitor and they talk to them. And those solicitors don't always talk to each other or to the estate agent. So, it's difficult, isn't it, to try and get everything progressed and a date sorted and it actually happening on the day. I remember so many people having issues, but, I've lived in this property 22 years. And about 4 days before we were supposed to exchange, we were told everything was going through and everything. Came to the day, we've been given the keys because they said, we're happy for you to get in there and start cleaning the place and getting ready to move in. So we came on the day, and then we had a phone call from the solicitor saying they haven't exchanged.
Yeah,
so you're joking. And I phoned up and I ended up speaking to the people, their solicitors saying, if you don't sort this out, they're actually on holiday somewhere, I think Tenerife or somewhere. And I said, if you don't do this now, we're going to pull out. And so I was quite happy to put everything back, turn the truck around and go off again. So, but it can be a nightmare, can't it?
It's the most stressful thing you'll do.
Moving house and divorce are the most stressful things you'll ever do in your life.
That's it. Yeah, one can cause the other, I think.
Yes, very true. So, do you think there's anything that we could do to actually improve things in the estate agents industry?
Yeah, I think what you've touched on there. I think the after sale issue is the main problem. That how vulnerable you are as a seller. Not so much a buyer, in my opinion. I think as a seller, you can end up in a real position where, like you say, you're held over a barrel, basically. You can invest a lot of money, you can pack your whole world up. If you've got little ones, it's even harder. It's just tough. And people know that you're in a position where they can turn around and say, actually, you know what, I'm sitting in a rented property. I can take this for another 6 months, give me 20 grand off your property. That's the main place it needs to change because you're just so vulnerable. There's only so much we can do. And, we'll, as agents, I feel we're relatively strong with things like this because one of the main things you get in the industry is people agree a sale. They'll they'll buy a 1930s property. They'll agree it, fantastic. They'll get a survey. They'll put that survey in front of us and say, well, hang on a minute. I now want this much off because the wiring hasn't been done to regs now. And a lot of agents, it's a horrible thing to say, are office boys, and they're scared of builders and they're scared of surveyors and they don't know what they're talking about when that happens. And they'll bottle it and they'll go to their clients and say, look, we'll just negotiate. And as much as we are very, very strong, I deal with that personally. A lot of the companies still, it's one of the main things I end up doing. It's really, really hard to, you can bare your teeth, you can call their bluff, but at the end of the day, if they want to pull out, your client can end up in a real predicament here and lose a lot of money. And then you've got to start the whole process again, even marketing. So you're at that stage, you've packed the whole house up. The house looks absolutely crap now because you've got everything in boxes. You've got to go back to doing viewings. And it's a position that's just unfair. And that needs to change. I think once that changes, I think that'll improve the
Because
industry.
in Scotland it's different, isn't it? You can't actually, once you've actually been accepted your bid, and it's sealed bids, isn't it? Once it's accepted, you can't change, and that is the price as well. Once it's
so
been
much better
accepted between two parties. So yeah, that would be so much better, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have this situation. But I think it works both ways, isn't it? It's not just the buyer, negotiating. Sometimes the seller could go back and say, actually, I've got a better offer now. The term gazumping was around a long time ago, wasn't it?
That's tough because it's definitely a seller's market at the minute where we are, and we're getting positions where legally we have to put every offer to a vendor, even if it's an absolute nonsense throwaway comments on the phone. We have to put it to the vendor in writing, and the problem is some of these offers. Our advice is strong on the phone to look. Don't touch them with a barge pole. This is not the. We don't believe they're going through. They're trying to blow everyone else out of the water by offering 25 grand more than the next person. They've got no intention of paying you this money. We have to put it there, and sometimes that money is life-changing money. We've had some offers that have, and some that have gone through as well. So you have to be very careful as an agent that you're not giving bad advice, because some of them are going through.
Because if it's realistic and it's too high, it's higher than you'd expect. They could be missing out, couldn't they?
Absolutely, 100%. A lot of money on the line there.
Yeah, I'd say it's a difficult game, isn't it, for everybody? The buyer, the seller, and also everybody involved in it. Very challenging. So but everybody does it at least once in their life, don't they? Buy a house and sell it at some stage. So there's a lot of people out there doing it. So which areas do you cover then? So is it up the whole of Birmingham?
We kind of do the 5 mile radius of Solihull. So Solihull, Withall, Hollywood, Shirley, Alton, Acox Green, Hall Green. And then we go a little bit into like the Kings Heath B14 area and a little bit of like the Sheldon area as well. It is kind of where we are. We have sales is kind of he's very popular Black Guards at the moment. And we've got a strong lettings department that we took someone on 2.5 years ago who's kind of taken the lettings from me and done a fantastic job at it. So we've got a strong lettings portfolio now that's kind of growing pretty rapidly, and that covers a bit further really, because you can go a bit further with lettings. So we'll go a little bit further with our lettings properties for our landlords. So that's kind of where we are. We've I took a guy called John last year who looks after kind of our £1 million properties now. We call that the Gold Collection. He will go far afield as well, because there are those those bespoke properties that we want to be dealing with, and he will travel a bit further for those things. So our bread and butter sales is within 5 miles, lettings a little bit further, and then the Gold Collection will go the whole of kind of the Midlands area.
So where are the most expensive houses then, if you were looking for these gold properties? Which have got the most of those properties in?
Dorwich and Knoll are still a Solihull base, about as good as it gets around there. And then obviously if you look in the Midlands, Sutton Coldford's still strong. You look at some of the properties over there and they're incredible. So they're kind of your strong areas. And you got a place like Barn Green. There's some wow properties as well there in that type of location. Yeah, so that's kind of your wow properties, absolutely.
So what's going to happen going forward then? What are your plans? Are you looking to expand, have another office, spread? Are you going to try and do different things? Are you going to diversify away from just lettings and estate agency?
Yeah, it's a tough one for me, because we're at a funny point now, because we're certainly at the point now where we'll be looking for another office, because we're kind of bursting the seams at the Shirley office. We have, we've got too many people in that office now. We've got the lettings team still heavily having to work from home at the moment, which is kind of a hangover from the COVID situation. But yeah, certainly it will be another location. I'm all about kind of creating a full service across the whole, the whole property journey. So we've got the estate, the sales, the lettings, and the Gold Collection crack now. We even added a van to the service last year, so we offer that to people. So it's something that we give a free van to our clients now to move house. So we're just trying to kind of tick every box. So certainly we'll be probably looking into more developments, because that's kind of a big passion of mine, to go into building houses again, new builds, and just adding those departments on. But I'm about getting the best people in those positions, because certainly I am definitely not the best lettings director for this company. I'm definitely not the best prestige property director for this company. And it's about getting those correct people in the correct roles. So it's just about slowly but surely doing and adding the right people at the right time to put us in the strongest position across the whole.
And that's it. The best thing to be in a business is have better people around you than you are. Because everybody, if you're the best person there's something wrong in your business.
That's it. No, I learned that. I learned that quite early. That again, if the sales progression, like try and keep me away from sales progression a little, because I can be a little bit aggressive with things, and it can become an issue. So Laura will not want me touching sales progression often because of that reason. I don't believe I'm strong to that. Whereas selling and the marketing of the company, and that's where I think I'm very, very strong at. But you do have to be big enough to understand. You've got people that are stronger than you in those positions. So yeah, absolutely.
So if anybody's out there who's interested in putting their property with you, so what would you say to them to say, this is different, what's different how we approach it, and this is how we'll look after you?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, I hope that what comes across from me and all my staff, we're genuine, we're authentic. I wasn't from an agency background. That was a big thing with us, and I had no one knew me. And that was, I've had to build kind of a knowledge from what I know rather than, what I've been told is the thing to do. I've learned, I've made massive mistakes, and I look back and I cringe at some of the things I used to claim when I was starting. And I look at it now and I think, how would I laugh at someone doing that now? But the beautiful thing is that nothing happened to me. I'm sure all my competition was laughing at me at that time, and quite rightly so. I would probably laugh at someone if they were making the claims I was doing now. But the nice thing is about that it doesn't matter who's laughing and who's mocking you. It doesn't matter, and that's a nice thing. So we've kind of learned everything we've learned. We've genuinely learned. We've made those mistakes ourselves rather than reading a manual or copying another agent. We've learned it on there, and that's important across all my staff. Like I say, I've got some fantastic staff. All of them have joined me. And most of them have stayed with me and learnt on the job. And only one has worked at a estate agent previous. Everyone else who works for me was not an estate agent previous, and I think that's
so they haven't been stained with that estate agency ways. Then, they've got the black and gold ways.
That's right, absolutely. And I'm not saying that's right, and we're certainly not the finished article. And I'm sure in 4 or 5 years' time, we'll be a much more polished version of what we are. But definitely, we're authentic, and there's no doubt. You'll get a proper genuine advice, and not just what suits us. And also we're in it for the long haul. We're not in it to make a quick buck. We're in it to become the number one agent here, and that is a long-term thing. And there's no doubt we give a genuine, authentic service.
Okay, so we've got the website up on the screen. So if you're interested in looking at some of the properties that have been advertised, learning more about how you could actually work with Black and Gold, go to the website. We've also had your LinkedIn profile up, I believe, earlier. So have we got the LinkedIn profile? And there we go. If you want to learn a bit more about Mike and connect to Mike, there's Mike's LinkedIn profile. So I gave you a couple of prompts earlier about 2 questions we're going to ask towards the end. So first one is, what's the best meal you've ever had, and where did you have it, and why was it the best meal?
I've been trying to think what I've been talking about. It's because I am a notoriously not interested in food. I'm terrible. Like I say, I could get by. If you get a food pill, I would have it, because I'm not fussed with food at all. I'm terrible. But I think probably the best food I ever had was on the honeymoon. And we went to Mauritius. It was just literally it was an all-inclusive, beautiful restaurant, and we had like a steak meal. And I just always remember that as probably my best. And it was in Mauritius. I can't remember the name of the hotel. I should, because it was my honeymoon. But it was a nice venue as well as a nice meal. It was stunning, yeah. And it was literally just an after. And it wasn't like we got older. We literally went to the pool and we had this lunch, and it was spot on. I think that's probably the best steak I've ever had. It was beautiful. That was.
And then the other thing I primed you with is, what's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Oh, I'm so boring. That's a problem. Oh,
we've had all sorts.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is setting this company up from jumping from no money, from plenty of money to no money, and sticking with it is probably the most adventurous thing I've ever done. As boring as that is, I think that's probably my one thing I'm always very, very proud of that I've managed to do.
And so I did the same thing 19 years ago when I set my business up, and I had no idea about running a business. I'm sure you had the same thing. You didn't know how to run your accounts, how to do all the transactional side of things, how to measure how well you've been successful and things. It's hard work, isn't it? It really is hard work. Yeah,
no, absolutely, it really is.
Yeah, we've also got a banner at the bottom, which has just disappeared. I was just about to say there's a banner at the bottom saying if anybody's interested in joining us and actually telling their story about how they've got to where they are and talk about their business, drop Rachel and I an email and we can get something set up on a Tuesday at 2 or a Thursday at 2 now from next week. But, just let us know. And if you know anybody, Mike, who'd be interested in joining us, just let us know and we'll get them on the list and find out about their journey through life as well. So next week we've got Neil Jinks on Tuesday. Neil ties in a little bit with what you do, Mike, because Neil is the one that the courts then organise to go and get people to pay up when they're not paying up for their mortgage or whatever it is as well. So he manages a lot of that, collections side of things for the courts in Birmingham. So we've got Neil in on Tuesday. So we'll most likely have some quite interesting conversations with Neil on Tuesday about that. But if you can stay on afterwards and we'll just have a quick wash up and see how things went. And everybody else, we'd love to see you on our next one next Tuesday. So join us next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Thanks a lot.